Hey everyone, I'm back, and it's about 5 o'clock in the afternoon. And by the title, this is the news that I said that I would present. I didn't tell you exactly what it was going to be when I gave my earlier live stream talking about the channel name change is Zinnia62, and now Zinnia62 Live. So I'm going to talk and give you all an opportunity to come in, and while you're doing that, I'm going to go to the YouTube page and work on the meta tag installations. And for what is going to be, this is more a basketball halftime discussion. This is not going to be, it's more of a presentation of my findings when we talk about it later. But this is another one of those vlogs I was talking to you about that in the past would have been a video, but I want to get the word out now and alert people to what's happening, what I found, and get the news out, as they say, via this wonderful tool of live streaming. At any rate, we are control room. The stream is great. There's one viewer, welcome. And I'm going to the watch page. The stream health is good. And scroll down a bit, put that there. My gosh, I have a commercial already. Bitcoin mining, how about that? Bitcoin mining, ooh, I like it. Let's see here, and I'm going to tweet this out, share. Turn down the volume there, push the share button. There's the share button. And let's see here, put this NFL Raiders there. And let's see, I have 5 watching now. So I think once I get just a few more in, I'll read to you the blog post that I wrote but haven't placed on Zinnia62.com yet, which explains in detail what this title is all about. In the nutshell, the Southern Nevada Tourism and Infrastructure Act that was passed on October 16th of last year said that lease agreement that was struck between an NFL team, the Raiders, and the Stadium Authority, the Las Vegas Stadium Authority, was supposed to include UNLV. But the draft lease agreement that was presented on the 20th of April included mention of a sublease because they're still trying to work out problems, right? That in and of itself is not in accordance with the law. And then the law allowed for a stadium events company to be owned by the team, but there's no language that say the stadium events company and the team can be the same, and yet right now they are. The Raiders have referred to it that way, and Raiders legal representative Dan Ventrelli has signed a document regarding a personal seat license that you can see on the website of the Las Vegas Stadium Authority, as if the Raiders are both the stadium events company and Stadco at the same time. And that is not specifically allowed by the law. And the reason is they don't have a Stadco, okay? The Stadco does not exist. But rather than, the Stadium Events Company, Raiders are Stadco, but the Stadium Events Company does not exist. Now, there are people who guess that it might be Legends and all this because of Jerry Jones, but the bottom line is, it does not exist, okay? So, it just is, it's not there. Hello. It's not there. So, there's this rush, right, to push this in place. The other problem with respect to UNLV, again, is that while the Raiders are being allowed to not pay rent and call their bond issue obligation with respect to the Bank of America company rent, UNLV is being charged rent, and it's right there in the Southern Nevada Tourism Infrastructure Act documents, and it's repeated in the latest draft of the Raiders lease agreement with the Stadium Authority. Okay? So, I'll get to that in a second, Joseph Jones, but I'll ask. Hold on a second. Let's see. We'll get to that. Still explaining. Yeah, put a smile. I'm still explaining. So at any rate, the upshot of this, okay, let me read to you what I wrote in detail, because I want you to understand this now that we've got a growing base of people that are going to look at this right now. Because I assume other people watching the basketball game. I don't want everybody to be able to go back to the basketball game, but I want to get this out and in later. The Oakland Raiders are in a tough spot in their attempt to relocate to Las Vegas from Oakland, and one has only to look at the second version of the proposed stadium lease agreement with the Las Vegas Stadium Authority with respect to the Southern Nevada Tourism Infrastructure Act to see that. The SNTIA was signed to Nevada law October 17th of 2016 and basically governs what documents ought to be prepared in conjunction with building a new stadium for an NFL team. In this case, the Oakland Raiders, which were granted the right to leave Oakland for Las Vegas on March 26th of 2017. I was there. The SNTIA specifically states that a lease between the NFL team and the, quote, stadium events company and to the stadium authority, we now call the Las Vegas Stadium Authority, should be formed. The stadium events company is, as Section 18 explains, a person whose business is organized under the laws of this state, Nevada, for the purpose of leasing the National Football League Stadium project from the Stadium Authority and is owned by 1, the National Football League team or its affiliate, 2, a developer partner or its affiliate, or 3, the National Football League team or its affiliate and a developer partner or an affiliate of a development partner. Got it? Also, with respect to the Stadium Events Company and the Stadium Authority, SNTIA reads that the Stadium Authority must 6. Require and receive such audits and other measurements of the performance of a development partner or the Stadium Events Company as it deems necessary to ensure that the operation of the National Football League Stadium project complies with sections 21 to 37 inclusive of this act, talking about the SNTIA, except that the Stadium Authority may not require an audit of the general business of the National Football League team or any development partner. 7, consider, approve, or disapprove an annual capital improvement budget for the National Football League Stadium project submitted by the Stadium Events Company. B, any specific requests for capital improvements proposed by the Stadium Events Company or National Football League team. Note, I want you to note this, the law does not say the National Football League team itself can be the Stadium Events Company. Hey, Bernard, how you doing? It doesn't say that. Listen up, please. The SNTIA law is written with the idea that the Oakland Raiders and the Stadium Events Company, quote unquote, would be separate entities, okay? While that's the case, the preliminary lease, as of now, I'm reading from the document that I wrote, is written in this way according to pages 1, 6, and 7 of the lease document. Raiders Stadium Events Company in black and white. That's what it's called, okay? Also, while the lease document allows for different addresses between the Stadium Events Company and the Raiders, many of the rest of the pages identify Stadco and Stadium Events Company as one. This lease agreement should be rewritten with the idea of making sure the language clearly follows what the SNTIA calls for, rather than leave room for misinterpretation. The fact that a Stadium Events Company has not been secured as of now should not be a deterrent to crafting a lease agreement that clearly and consistently follows the SNTIA. This is important because on at least one occasion, the Raiders legal representative Van Ventrelli has signed a letter to Las Vegas Stadium Authority as if the Raiders were both the team and stadium events company. I provide a link to that in the document that I wrote. Okay? Hey, John Davis, how are you doing? If the Raiders and the Stadium Authority have not identified a stadium events company, what's the rush in, allowing what appears to be a kind of a cutting of legal corners, right? Having lease and letter documents written as if a stadium events company exists when it doesn't is not going to effectively speed up the process leading towards stadium construction. Okay, it's not going to increase the sale of personal seat license. It's not going to happen at all. It's not going to increase the number of deposits that are put in. All right. If the Raiders and the Las Vegas Stadium Authority are behind what is a really aggressive and unrealistic 2020 schedule, why not admit it? Okay? Why not admit it? Now, I continue here, and I go on to state that, find that this is non-relocation agreement not written, presented, or signed by the Oakland Raiders. In total, there are 12 documents that have to be created, presented, reviewed, changed, and eventually signed before stadium construction can start without a hitch. There's the Clark County Development Agreement, the Project Financing Agreement, the Stadium Transfer Agreement, the Land Transfer Agreement. Note there's no land that's been bought. Las Vegas Stadium Board Findings, Stadium Lease Agreement, Stadium Development Agreement, Private Seat License Agreement, Team Use Agreement. All right, got that, Zinsters. Community Benefits Agreement, the UNLV Joint Use Agreement, the Raiders Non-Relocation Agreement, and the Leasehold Mortgage Agreement. That's a lot of agreements. Of these, the Raiders Non-Relocation Agreement is arguably the most important legal guide other than the lease agreement and the SNTIA itself. Okay? To date, that document that Oakland Raiders owner Mark Davis said last year would not be an issue as he planned to live in Las Vegas for the rest of his life. He said that. As of this writing, is still not only not in existence, well, it's not signed. You can't sign it if it doesn't exist, right? It just doesn't exist, all right? And that's even after the NFL granted the Raiders the right to leave Oakland, okay? Listen up, because this gets better, folks. All this while Clark County, Nevada has started to collect the monthly revenue from the hotel tax increase for the stadium, and which will be collected over a 30-year period to pay off the $750 million bond issue, the bond issue associated with the $750 million subsidy. The bond issue itself is actually bigger than that, okay? Yikes, all right? Perhaps the Raiders are having a hard time with the SNTIA's edict that the University of Nevada, Las Vegas would be a co-tenant of a facility that they think they're supposed to call their own. While the Raiders lease calls for a sublease with UNLV, the SNTIA calls for UNLV to be part of the lease agreement itself with the Raiders and the Stadium Authority. Take a look at page 18 of the SNTIA itself. It's actually, it goes like this. A lease agreement entered into by the Stadium Authority with the Stadium Events Company, and basically it goes on, and if you go down to basically G, it reads as this: provide, in other words, this lease agreement is supposed to provide for the accommodation of a sufficient number of dates to host at the project the regular and postseason home games of the university football team, subject to the following conditions and restrictions. 1, any National Football League event has priority use. Okay. 2, any date for a regular postseason home game of the university football team at the project must, 1, not conflict with the use of basically, the project by the NFL, okay? And then 2, not conflict with major events that are not National Football League events that were scheduled to be hosted at the project before the university finalized the schedule of home games for the applicable season. That's kind of, clause that makes sense, right? I mean, if you know that Beyonce is going to be in concert on a certain date, you're not going to actually schedule a UNLV football game for that same date, right? So, or at that same time. Maybe you can do it maybe different times that day, but we get the idea, okay? That's logical, all right? 3, be mutually agreed upon by the university and the stadium events company. And 4, be approved by the stadium authority after the university has finalized the schedule of home games for its football team for the applicable season, and the dates of those home games have been approved by the stadium authority. The date of a home game may not be changed to accommodate an event that is not a National Football League event without the approval of the university. Okay? And 4, if a change to the schedule of home games for the university football team is proposed for the purpose of allowing a home game of the team to be televised, the stadium events company or the NFL must use reasonable commercial efforts to assess the feasibility of the change and allow the change to be made if it is commercially reasonable, except that such change may not interfere with or impair the ability of the NFL team, the Raiders, to play a home game at the project. Makes sense, right? Makes sense, okay? Then establish reasonable rent to be paid by the university for use of the project. Keep that in mind. Reasonable rent, keep that in mind, all right? And it says for the regular and postseason home games of its football team, except that for each regular season home game of the football team and not more than 3 other events selected by the university, the reasonable rent must not exceed the actual operational or pass-through costs, excluding any fixed costs to host the game or event at the project. Then I, provide that on the date of a regular postseason home game of the university football team, the university must be given such access to the project and its facilities and amenities as is reasonably necessary to create an environment reasonably consistent with a home game for a college football team in Division I Football Bowl subdivision or its successor division of the National Collegiate Athletics Association or its successor organization. In other words, the point being is that from the point of view of the SNTIA, the Southern Nevada Tourism Infrastructure Act, the university is a very important part of the lease agreement. However, in the draft that was presented on April 20th, UNLV is mentioned as a subleaser. That's it. That's not the way the law is written. And it indicates a deep problem. I'm not done. Also, the SNTIA, okay, does not allow for a sublease, as I said to you, before the UNLV and Raiders Stadium. It's not specifically in black and white. But then here is the larger issue, folks. This is the larger issue, right? UNLV pays rent. The Raiders don't, at least not in the conventional sense, right? And so you can bet, as I write here, that UNLV having to pay rent in a stadium where the Raiders are allowed to basically get away with not paying rent in the conventional way is a big issue. That is a gigantic issue. That is a Godzilla, not King Kong-sized issue, because Godzilla is bigger than King Kong. That is a Godzilla-sized issue, okay? It is a Godzilla sounds issue. And it's not a matter of all that stuff. Forget it. Just listen up, okay? Listen up. You can bet the UNLV having to pay rent, that's the huge issue. And also, look, the SNTIA calls for UNLV to pay stadium rent. And the lease agreement specifically says that the stadium company, and in large letters, pays no rent. It's right there in black and white for anybody who bothers to read the latest draft. And from my impression, a lot of people haven't bothered to do so. Reading matters, but I digress, okay? It's almost like UNLV was deliberately given financial stress connected with the stadium project, whereas the planners are doing everything to leave the Raiders without any. All right? Yeah, but, and see, that's a great point, Steve, but here's the issue, all right? And again, you buttress the point. What about UNLV? UNLV is poor, and yet UNLV has to pay all of this money? That doesn't make any sense. They also have to raise $200 million on their own. That's another issue. So, you know, this is not a good situation at all. And I said, maybe it was, I'm joking here in the text, I'm saying maybe it's a, issue with team colors. Yeah, right now. The UNLV official colors are scarlet and gray. Mark Davis didn't want to share Levi Stadium with the 49ers because as one Niners official once told me, can't say who, Mark doesn't like the fact that we have red seats. He said that, okay? Whatever the case, it's very clear that there are already a lot of problems and issues with the Oakland Raiders Las Vegas Stadium lease drafting process. The idea of the SNTAA was to make sure UNLV gained a new football stadium as much as, arguably more, than an NFL team in Las Vegas. All right? Now it looks like the university is getting second-class treatment, my words, and if that's not resolved, yeah, and these are my words, it could derail the Raiders' efforts. Indeed, UNLV, angered over the Raiders' issue, could choose to delay this process. Read the SNTAA because it specifically allows for an 18-month window to draft these agreements. And if that isn't done, guess what? The Stadium Authority has to dissolve and control reverts to UNLV, where they get to establish their own new stadium, along with something called the Campus Improvement District. It's right there in black and white. So UNLV could stall out this process. That's the way it's written right here, okay? They have, you want to know what the specific date is? And this goes to your earlier question, John. The stadium rent started, okay, to be collected on March 1st. So basically, they've got until September 1st of 2018 to get this done. If they don't, dead duck, all right? And so basically, as I said to close, stay tuned, folks. This is so rocky, the Raiders are going to beg the NFL to stay in Oakland unless this situation doesn't improve. The situation improves. Right now, it doesn't look good at all. All right, now, let me get to your points. As you said earlier, Oakland's innocent in using a team. I did. Didn't City hold a press conference announcing one-year leases? I was there. It wasn't before lease. No, that's not true, Richard. I'm glad you asked the question, though, Richard. And let me address it. Here's the truth, and I actually blogged about it before. First of all, at the NFL annual meeting, which I attended, Oakland Raiders owner Mark Davis said that when he signed the lease agreement, he then signed it, all right? And then, as you note in your comment, he claims the rent was increased. That is not true. He signed the lease agreement on April 7th. In fact, if you go to Zenny62 and go to my video list and type Raiders lease, you can see the 9-volume collection of videos that are all concerning the lease, okay? It was right there at the press conference where I asked Mark Davis a number of questions. Now, but I digress. A person who was the digital media executive with News 3 in Las Vegas on 28th of January uploaded a document to Scrib that was from Lynn Jessup, the president of the University of Nevada, Las Vegas, and it announced that they were to meet with Las Vegas Sands representatives and Oakland Raiders representatives because the Raiders were searching for a new stadium. That was January 28th of 2016. By contrast, Mr. Davis claimed at the NFL annual meeting that it was after the rent increase, which he said was after April 7th, that he then started to look for a new stadium. That's not true. That's not true at all, okay? And the problem is that in today's media world, journalists, as they're called, walk around getting quotes, which means they can be spun in any direction. They don't check. They don't ask questions. And so if no one talks to them, nothing gets written. Or what happens is that they end up not getting access to sports events, and so they're afraid. And what happens is that the truth goes right down the drain, and they don't encourage you to ask questions, even if maybe you might be wrong on this point or that. They want to shut you up. It's common in development. That's why there's something called slaps. You know, when a person's criticizing, in California, there's a slap lawsuit, and there's also now an anti-slap legislation. SLAP, the acronym basically is to slap you to basically shut you up as a complainer. They don't want you to talk. But the media's job is to report the truth. And just like with the Grubman issue, when I asked Eric about the Goldman connection, he got mad at me, but it was sticking out there. And no one asked him about it but me. I'm not saying like the greatest thing over, but the point that I'm making is that we're in a society today, we're in a generation where truth in media is being discouraged. So I don't want to get off on that. I apologize. Thank you, Bernard. I apologize. Now, but Richard, do you see what I'm saying? Richard says, okay, so Mark Davis is lying about having signed the lease agreement prior to having the rent increase. Yes, sir, he is. And that's common knowledge within the city, and the city has hit the ceiling on more than one occasion. John Davis, what did Tom Hanks say about the Raiders move? He hated it. Steve Macy asked this. Let's say this thing collapses. Do you think Mark tries to go somewhere other than Oakland, knowing that he's caused problems with the city? I think Mark tries to sell. I really think that Mark would try to sell. And let's see here. Jay Garcia, is the hotel tax even going to cover the cost to stay in? Jay, I'm still not convinced there's enough money generated. I think the first month was, they got lucky, but I still believe that it should have been 1.4% rather than 88 100ths and 1%. Now I understand the fear of Clark County minders in having a hotel tax that basically would cause them to be higher than 3 other cities like Orlando, which is also expanding its convention center base. But the bottom line is, this is a situation they created for themselves. Okay? So you can't half-butt it. All right? Now, let me see what I'm missing here. Hey, Brian, how you doing? Brian says, by the way, I think he missed something. Richard, I think I got your question, right, Richard? Hey, Airplane, how you doing? Airplane says it's going to be for an hour and 15 minutes. Airplane, I'm going back to the basketball game. I'll be back, okay? John Morgani says, stadium will never be built. Raiders' new home will be the luxurious Sam Boyd Stadium. Oh, boy. And Steve Macy said, I thought if the Raiders pay rent, it will cause a tax problem. And that's part of it. Again, there's still the issue of UNLV. Go Cubs says, at 4:30 MST, I have 2 church services on Sunday, so I have to go to the second service. I'll be gone for 2.5 hours. We have another stream later at 8 or 9. Yes, I will, Go Cubs. I will, and God bless you. And this is church. So let's see here. Diablo, you won't let it go. What else is there to talk about? Diablo, you're right. I'm not going to let it go. And shame on you for trying to discourage discussion and discovery about this. Okay? No. I will not let it go. Period. Because it's not done. As I said to a number of you, obviously you weren't tuning in at the time, but I'll repeat it for what I said before the vote. I said, a lot of you think that the vote's going to happen and that's it. No. The Raiders will still play in Oakland. There's a lot of pre-development work to be done, and there are a lot of issues with this deal such that I think this deal is still dead. I've said that, and I've said it before, and now you're upset that I'm pointing out where it's a problem. Too bad. Too freaking bad. Okay? You don't half-ass things. My background's in urban planning, not journalism. You don't half-ass this stuff. You get it right. Las Vegas is great at action, but it's lousy at planning, and this is another example of what I'm talking about. You got the Fontainebleau sitting there 70 stories, empty, with windows blowing out like it's got teeth knocked out or something. It's horrible. Okay? Now, Richard, thank you, Zenny, for clearing this up. Was eating away with me on Lake Charles, Louisiana. Hey, cool. How's the weather? After being in North Carolina, like, thank you. Pride in place. Thank you, Mr. Carlson. Appreciate it. Jay says, how confident are you that in the Vegas deal being dead and Raiders staying in Oakland? The way this is going right now, very. I'll say I'm never going to lean and say absolute, but look, this is going the way I thought it was going to go. I said last year when the S&TIC was involved in this, it was all moving too fast. You don't plan stadiums this quickly. You just don't. What's the rush? All right. Do I know who? Steve, I'm glad you said that. I need to follow up on that. I don't. Let's see here. Brian, why can't the Davis family actually find a local Bay Area investor and sell a fair share of the team? I know they own like 45%. Actually, it's less than that. And here's the thing. That's a great question. That is a fantastic question. Davis never talks about approaching a Larry Ellison or Mark Zuckerberg or anybody in the tech community. It's like, I don't want to say that he's afraid of the tech community, but I get that impression. What is it about the Bay Area tech community he's so afraid of? I don't get it. Why would he want to, why would he bother shifting and just dealing with casino people as opposed to tech people? I'm curious. I don't know. That's a great question. Let's say this thing collapses. Do you think Mark tries to go somewhere other than Oakland? He said he would sell. I think that would be very difficult. The Raiders are starting to run out of welcome with the way they do business. So this is the last stop. And that's not signing the non-relocation agreement. That's a big issue. That's a big issue. All right. Now, what else? Hey, AG209, you missed some things. I'll be back to explain the rest. But, I'll be back. Now, Jadilla, Mark Davis has no one to pass the team on to. Why wouldn't he sell? It eventually has to be sold, but there are a ton of minority owners. Great point. Let's see here. Okay, not Genome got at you. So the Vegas deal is not done. No, it's not. You have 12 different agreements that have to be struck. The deal is not done. And the problem is that the mainstream media has given you this picture that, oh, the vote matters, and it's who won the vote and all this jazz. It's not done. It is not done. The deal could collapse still. And they've got a clock. And the end date of the clock is September 1st, 2018. Stephen Hill, the great director of economic development for the state of Nevada, a man I very much admire. I want to say that right here. I've admired Steve Hill before this. My admiration for Mr. Hill remains regardless of the fact that he's trying to go after the Raiders in Oakland. But my point is this. The fact remains that the situation that Mr. Hill has said, look, if we wanted to sign these agreements, we lay down, a deadline, right? Well, basically the deadline is there. It's September 1st of 2018. They need to get all these done significantly faster than that, because if they get close to that deadline, you can kiss, even right now you can kiss 2020 goodbye, okay? Because what they're doing is they're trying to cut corners to make the sale of PSLs go. They don't want to wait. And yet at the same time, they're pissing people off. Like, look what the NFL Network did yesterday, which is a great move because the Raiders still have to sell season tickets this year. Why is that important? Because the NFL, look, if the Raiders can't sell tickets this year, it affects the entire NFL because the NFL gets part of that revenue. So here you've got the Raiders basically scaring everybody off early and giving up their revenue, and that goes in the pockets of the other teams that come and play. Part of it. So they're really not handling this well at all. And that's a good thing the NFL Network did. And Rich Eisen talked about it. Glad he did. Now, do I think Marshawn Lynch is a way to soften the blow to Raider fans? No. Because the fact of the matter is, look, move or no move, the Raiders would have gotten Marshawn. That was something that was spiritually in the works for some time. The Raiders are not set to leave Las Vegas right now. So somebody in the media putting that on, woo-hoo, woo-hoo, woo-hoo. That's my idea. Okay, sorry. Now, what are these 12 agreements? How long they take to get to agree to? Brian, that's a great question. The 12 agreements actually are described. If you go to the Las Vegas Stadium Authority, they're actually in a document there. But I also list them in the text that goes with this live stream that I'm about to, that will be posted when I'm done. And the blog post will go on zenny62.com because the blog post itself is longer than the description area for this video. So I'll have at about 10 minutes after I'm done here, well, 15 minutes, I'll have it posted with the link so you can read all the documents. But I can tell you what they are. There's an agreement with Clark County. There's the lease agreement that we're talking about. There's the development agreement. There's the UNLV agreement. There's the land agreement. Land hasn't even been bought yet. There's the land relocation agreement, which hasn't been drafted. Those are 6 of the 12 right there, okay? Now, thank you. And makes sense since Bernard sucks because he's my favorite player. Yeah. I think someone should get these facts. But what he says, he signed a lease. So I got him, Richard. Richard, I'm telling you. I got the facts. I followed this for some time. In fact, if you go to Zenny62 on YouTube, we're already here right now, right? Type Goodell Raiders, all right? And there are 2 videos where Marjorie Goodell, I point to him Last year at the Charlotte NFL Spring League meeting of how the Raiders were going behind the back of, or basically not acting in good faith with the city of Oakland. And Goodell said, his own words, that the reason the Raiders don't have a stadium is, quote, partially their own fault. It's right there. That's one of a number of examples. And then after the NFL annual meeting, I told the Raiders' great PR director, Will Kiss, that I was going to put up, because this is nothing personal. I really like the folks that I'm talking about on a personal level. I really do. Will Kiss is a great guy. I like Mark Davis a lot. But this is a matter of the business that's not going the way it should go. As I say, it's nothing personal. It's only business. You should know, Godfather. But my point is this. I gave Will Kiss a heads up. I said, hey, Will, I found the document that was posted by UNLV President Lynn Jessup and as per Audrey's last name just escaped my mind, the digital media director for News 3 Las Vegas at the time. She's now since got another job in Boston. But she posted on the 28th of January that UNLV President Lynn Jessup was to meet, and this is right there on script, was to meet representatives of the Oakland Raiders and Las Vegas Sands because the Raiders were looking for a new stadium. That was January 28th of 2016. The lease was signed by Mr. Davis on April 7th of the same year, when he claims that after that he was looking for a new stadium. Not true, Richard. What Mr. Davis says is simply not true. And it's evidentially not true. There's evidence to show it's not true. It's just there. Okay? Now, could the NFL owners save the Vegas deal? You know, that's the wild card. How badly do they want to be in Vegas? And the question is why. I supine that the reason why this effort is going the way it is because the NFL is looking at its rights fee future and it's seeing that it's not going to get the same billions of dollars from media companies that it has enjoyed, particularly Cap City's ESPN. And as you know, ESPN is having its problems with cable. So they're looking around and saying, where can we get anything close to that? And they're taking a second look at gambling, fantasy sports, and everything else. And I really think that's what is leading to this. To have a better relationship over time with the gaming community, but not so much that it's gambling so that it perturbates the NFL's interests. But here's the catch, okay? It doesn't mean they have to be in Vegas. A lot of what they want to do, they can do in Oakland, establish relationships with the tech community. Many fantasy games are on tech platforms, and move forward from there. The Raiders could do that. But this goes to how the Raiders organization is ran, which historically has not been one that gained a lot of sponsorships on their own. It always associated winning football games with gaining sponsorships. Everything was on the field, and they worked from the inside out. It wasn't like the Cowboys. Enter Jerry Jones. So that's a good question. Now, Jerry Jones and Kraft own part of DraftKings, not all of it. Yeah, that's right, but not all of it. But and Brian says, where is Mark Davis actually coming up with the funds? 375 million in relocation and 500 million in stadium contributions. If I believe he's worth like 250 million. It's not all him. You have to remember, people tend to talk about the Raiders if it's just Mr. Davis. But here's the thing. He's got that Bank of America loan. And the big question here is there a revenue stream? No, it's a great question. These are great questions. Oh, why not Vegas, Any? Just asking. You say, why not Vegas? I don't understand that question, but let me deal with Mr. Guidry's question before. Now, let me see here. And I think someone says, Tiger Pride, we all know this will be a rocky road, but I see no reason why the Raiders would not use every available resource to get it done. But my point is, there are not a lot of resources for them. Okay? This is a matter of a guess. This is a matter of what's on paper and a matter of what's numerically available. This is a matter of a guess. I say to anybody, do your own spreadsheets and do the math. And see, what's funny about this process, I just want to get this out of the way. When I say do the math to people, they always do the revenue part, but they never do the cost part. Okay? They don't do the net operating income part. I had one guy send me this long note about the revenue here and his guesses, and I said, well, okay, well, what about the stadium costs? What about the bond issue costs? What about the debt coverage ratio, which basically governs what you should be spent, how much revenue you should be receiving? And then what about the debt service? Are you going to use a level debt service? Principal sinking fund? What are you going to use? All of these complications have to be considered and calculated out. And anybody can sit down and do the work if they want to. I mean, a lot of people go to all 22s for football and they come up with stuff. Why not do some math? I do. Hey, and when I'm wrong, I'll admit it. But I love to sink into this. I love to talk about it because the public should have this discussion. The most horrible thing about this process is how discussion and questions have been all but stymied. Not here. Not here. So, sorry about that. And as Gidrius, anyway, that's what I'm saying. Right now on paper, it's a loss. The $27 million on loan. Oh, Richard, I'm sorry. Weather in Lake Charles has been kind. Cool. Okay. What do I mean, Master Yoda? Let's see here. Raider Ness, I will not support the NFL anymore. Education comes first. Maniac 5900 says, do you still know I didn't go to his minority owner? I don't, and I apologize. And let's see here. Let's see. I'm going to skip over that one. And Diablo, I still don't I don't want to misunderstand your question. I still don't get that one. And Donis, I think I answered your question, right? Oh, and so with all this knowledge, Zini, what do you think will come out of this? I personally do not think that Mark Davis will come back to Oakland. He's burned the bridges bad. I think that if he wanted to come back to Oakland, I don't think he's burned all. Let me tell you something. There are people in Oakland working behind the scenes who talk to the Raiders on a regular basis. I can't say who. And I'm starting to believe that a lawsuit right now is a bad idea. Yeah, I did say that. Yes, I did say that. And I plan to follow that up. Hey, Donkey, how you doing? I did say that. And I say it's a bad idea because a number of us believe that this thing's going to fall apart. Okay? And yeah, I said that. A number of us in Oakland believe this is going to fall apart. And we don't want to be in a situation where we have a bad relationship with the Raiders when it does. We want to welcome them back because they never left and build for them the stadium that they so richly deserve. That's the idea. That's the idea. Okay? But this is an enormous mistake from a number of angles. It just is. And again, it isn't that Las Vegas doesn't deserve a team, but Las Vegas has to sit down and calculate out the real expenses associated with this and say, where do we get this done, and plan for it over an appropriate time, not rush into it. This is a $4 billion operation we're talking about here. It can't just be done. It's $4 billion. Transportation, infrastructure, planning for police. Do you realize there's an anti-scalping law out there? They plan to, thanks to Representative Woodruff in Nevada, they want to lock everybody up if they come to, scalp tickets. So if you're a ticket scalper, cha-ching, that's the sound of the handcuffs going on you. Just letting you know. Hasn't been passed yet, though. Still in discussion. What if Oakland gets an expansion team? Right now, they are the Raiders. The Raiders haven't left. The Raiders are in two places, Las Vegas, Oakland. Or if you like, Oakland and Las Vegas. Now, okay. How bad was the Lot Investment Group lacking? They weren't at all. They're still in play. How long do you think until Mark Davis has buyer's remorse on Vegas? Well, they already have it. They're marching along in fear. But remember, this has an end date. It's September 1st of next year. And UNLV could choose to stall them out. Remember, UNLV is being asked to pay rent, and the Raiders are not. Okay? And I thought Oakland wanted them out. No, Oakland does not want the Raiders out. People have been misquoting Libby. That's Libby. Libby's running for re-election next year. Okay? Do not associate the mayor of Oakland with the desires of the city. The public money issue, as Eric Grubman has specifically stated, more than once, the Raiders and the NFL were prepared to meet the mayor's challenge and use as little, if not any, public money as possible. He said that. That's capable. But the trouble is that the mayor did not do what I said to her to do. Give them the land. The Raiders have to pay property tax in the NFL, but use that as the rent, right? And give them part of the development monies. In other words, the city takes part of that. Basically, give the NFL the same deal they gave Fortress. Fortress was for that, and would be happy to participate in a level to, support that idea. Drew McKnight said so of Fortress. All right. Yeah, we know the Oakland Stadium is terrible. Okay. So are you basically saying the Vegas deal is falling apart? I'm basically saying, well, how can something fall apart that wasn't built? It's poorly structured. Okay? It's poorly structured to begin with. I mean, you want to break it down to basic, simple brass tacks. First of all, UNLV is getting short shrift. It's being asked to pay rent where the Raiders are not. All right? The Raiders, it's not clear that they actually have the money to support the debt that's on them. Okay? There are 12 documents to hash out, and the Raiders, who are allergic to sharing revenue to begin with, have to share revenue with, on balance, two organizations, Bank of America and if you like, in a sense, UNLV, because UNLV is in part the, stadium tenant there, sharing the stadium. They have to share the stadium with UNLV. So the Raiders are being asked to do something that, in their history, they have consistently shown that they didn't want to do. And in the case of the Bank of America loan, if you take the SNTIC, the Southern Nevada Tourism Infrastructure Committee consultants' numbers from last year, and you park the Bank of America loan debt service annually in it, that's a $27 million annual loss. So you say, like, I think Jason Cole said, oh, they've got a $25 million annual naming rights agreement. We haven't heard anything about that, right? You plug that in, that means they would have to take 72% of the naming rights agreement and use it to pay off that loan. That goes in reverse of what it takes to have the football team pencil out, which is the whole idea, is to make money for the football team. You can't just do a project. You have to do it in a way that makes sense that you can run your NFL team. Otherwise, it's not worth doing. Let's see here. Everything is going to make more sense when Oakland announces. Right, Maniac is correct. Hey, I'm going back to, let's see here. Honestly, Eric, if it's fake news, why don't you use your own, analysis rather than just coming up and saying fake news? Anybody can say anything, but do the work and show that I'm wrong. And I'm happy to compare notes with you. Do the math and show that I'm wrong. But to just say it's fake news is intellectually sloppy. And frankly speaking, I don't like intellectually sloppy on my channel. So if you want to say it's fake news, you bring it, pal. Because I'm ready, I'm proving I'm ready, and you've done nothing. Just letting you know that, okay? So, now, let's see here, from Brazil. All right. I believe I've got all the questions for now. Well, yeah, I'm thinking about banning him. I can't stand people who do that. Yeah, block him. Because I want you to block him. Here's why. Because I want him to do the work. I want people who say that I'm wrong to do the homework and prove that I'm wrong. Don't say it. Prove it. Do the work. Do the math. Do the research. If you show me a clause where I'm saying I'm incorrect, I'll do that, okay? I'm happy to do that. Oh, and by the way, for those people, that one idiot that keeps bugging me about the bet, I said I would not pay him because he tried to put information out that was not in accordance with Twitter rules. And so if anybody else bothers me about that again, they get blocked. I'm telling you, I do not allow for inappropriate behavior anywhere on social media with respect to anything. Not in general. I'm saying I don't have control over social media, but that really pissed me off. No, forget it. Oh, and by the way, deal doesn't work out. All right. Thanks for Brian, thank you for the questions. And Jordan says Oakland has had 22 years to try to do something with the Raiders, but they didn't. You're wrong. In fact, Jordan, I'll explain why. Wrong, I'll say wrong, Jordan. But it's a good question. Here's why. Okay, first of all, the Raiders came back in 1995. We in Oakland built the stadium for them. Okay? In 1996, it was discovered, hey, look, you know what? The PSLs weren't going to work. So let's figure this out. 1995, 2005, 2015, 2017. 22 years. For someone to say 22 years means they're not thinking. The Raiders came back to Oakland in a stadium that was considered new by the Raiders themselves 22 years ago. There was one person in 97 that said, hey, you know what? That stadium's not state of the art. That was me. And I did so. You can ask Alameda County Supervisor, then Oakland Councilman Nate Riley. He'll tell you because he was there when I said before the Oakland City Council that we were going to face a situation where we had to build a new stadium for the Raiders and the A's. And they said, why? Okay? And I said, because we brought the Raiders back, but the stadium wasn't state of the art. In other words, the west side, as you know, isn't, but the east side was. So they got half a stadium, okay? So, I appreciate it, Jordan. Sorry, it's like the black box. You see one thing, and I'm obviously animated. It's not about you. I'm just animated about it. I appreciate the question by all means. I love asking a question as opposed to you're just making a blanket statement. You asked a good question. I'm not avoiding it. But I believe the question deserves a good answer, okay? And my point is this, that as time went on, okay, 1995, 2005, we had 2006, the opening of MetLife Stadium and so on. The Raiders did not come to the city first and say, here is our plan for a new stadium. The Raiders have never once hired an architect and drew up a concept for a stadium in Oakland, not once. Ever. Okay? It has been, like Bob Nahas built the Coliseum, the Raiders were a tenant. That was back in 1965, 66, okay? Ever. Not at all. But the Raiders put money into Manteca Architects for Carson, and then borrowed that design, didn't want to spend the extra money, I guess, and, turned it over to Las Vegas, even though eventually, if they ever get to that point, that stadium is going to look vastly different than that Carson rendition, all right? My point is the Raiders have never once done it. And in the same way that Mr. Davis says, oh, well, I started looking for a new stadium after I signed the lease, which was April 7th, when he didn't, the Raiders have not told the truth about the new stadium situation in Oakland. Having said that, there are a number of people in key areas in Oakland. Oakland Councilman Larry Reed, who have identified that the Raiders needed a new stadium. But how can you work with an organization when it doesn't want to put its own money into it? All right? And then something happened that wrecked everything. And then Jerry Brown stepped in and he killed redevelopment. And that killed a lot of our ability to adequately finance a new stadium in Oakland. But now, guess what? Redevelopment's back as of 2014 in the state of California. It's back. In other words, we use tax increment financing. But the central point that I'm making is that the Raiders, they didn't do it on their own. And I remember I told Mark Bedane as president, Mark's a great guy, when Jack Del Rio was being named head coach at the press conference, and it was the same day, the same event, that Bedane was named the new president of the Oakland Raiders. And I said to him, hey, you can use industrial development financing, all right, to build a privately financed stadium in Oakland. This was early 2014. And I told him to call the California controller. I gave him the specific number of the controller. We were standing, he wrote it right down on there. So they had it in mind to build something. And I'm delighted that Mark Davis asked me to come up with a plan for him. I not only came up with a plan for him in 2015, you can just all you have to do is type Coliseum Reboot in Google. Website's right there. But I got Piper Jaffray Investment Bankers and Diane Pauley, the managing director, who did the Miller deal, Miller Park in St. Louis in 2002. I got them. And they've done 100 stadium financing deals. So when someone says we didn't have an investment banker, hey, I got them Piper Jaffray, and I have the emails to prove it. So I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it. I'm sorry. Phew, okay. I'm missing the game. Oh my God. All right, let me come back. Donis, I don't care who agrees with me or not. Period. I'm not looking around, oh, does somebody agree with me? You fucking care. I know what I'm talking about. All right. Back to the Clippers game. I got to see how this plays out. Basically, yeah, that's right. The red seat issue. I'll come back later. I'll be back, folks. I'll be back. But I'll put this up on Zenisic 2 within 15 minutes. I'll be back. See you.